morning. You can keep your conniving morning. When you been up for a bum, in a bills every morning. Now because your money done, you come with conniving morning. Then you had your pocket full, in a bills every morning. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me morning. Yes, morning, neighbor. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, I don't want you conniving morning. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. This is all the money that me walk. I said morning, neighbor. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, I don't want you conniving morning. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge on the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge on the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. There's one set of people getting aisle money. There's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Brickford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, poor people governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go
Providers of premium airport transfers. Enjoy a smooth, stress-free arrival by booking your comfortable and reliable airport taxi before you arrive. With affordable rates and exceptional service, we cover all major UK airports, including Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester, Birmingham, and many more. Wherever you land, we guarantee a seamless door-to-door experience to and from any UK airport. For your peace of mind, all our drivers are fully DBS checked and cleared, ensuring a safe and trustworthy service from the moment you arrive. Our friendly staff will meet and greet you in the airport arrival hall, assist with your luggage, and escort you to one of our luxurious vehicles. So wait no longer. We're ready to look after you from the moment you arrive in the UK. You can contact us via email info@firstclasstravelservice.co.uk, office phone +4 4195 2287 176, WhatsApp +4 479 136 0576 5 or +4 479 009 50171, or simply fill in our request, a quote form, at www.firstclasstravelservice.co.uk. Travel with confidence. Travel first class.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongue, you're looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Nam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is, Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely need it too. Thank you.
From Park arrival speeds of work to quarantines or sons. Children pledge each faithful heart to guard Guyana's lands, to foil the shock of rude invader who violate our earth, to cherish and defend forever the state that gave them birth. Nation's mighty soul, strong nation's reign, freedom or everlasting goal, courage and truth or reign, all living in a quest for peace, like ancient heroes brave, to strive and never cease, with strength beyond the slave. Guyana climbed the glorious virtue, faith, prosperity, joining the universal
Hi. Hello. Good morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. How are you doing, morning? Cousin Gwenny, morning. How are you doing? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. I'm your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It is now 7 hours 26, and it is the 6th day of August in year 2026. Welcome to the program. How you been? How was you yesterday? How was your last night? How you feeling this morning? So MV Malaysia eventually got to Northwest. Thank God for safe travels. Thank God for traveling mercies. So what y'all up to? It's Thursday, it's Mr. Jordan got to talk to y'all this morning, not me. Yes, Mr. Jordan has to speak with you this morning, as usual. So let me call the man one time, and don't stand between you guys too long, Sometimes I don't want to start because they say when you start, you don't. You like to drink water after us. And this morning, I want you to recognize how much water I drink after us, so I'm trying to cut it short. Tomorrow is Free Talk Friday, and we will talk tomorrow. I have a guest tomorrow. I think I have Kofi Kwame coming on with me tomorrow. And we're going to talk about that book that Moses Bagwan has launched or will be launching on Saturday. Mr. Jordan, morning, buddy, morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Kadaki. Good morning.
A lady called me yesterday say you can't tails out to school. You give him a number.
But for good cause. For good cause.
All right, now we see. I hope so.
Yeah? Well, I mean, so if she said she was a child mother, then she would never get your mother. You get your number. But
well,
she says she.
I know many of them out there could claim so, It's like looking for needle a son. They have been sworn. They have been sworn to secrecy. Well, anyway,
yes,
it's another Thursday.
Yeah, man. Thankful Thursday, man. It's good to be in the land that we live in, and I say that with some experience over the last couple of days. So it's good to be here, and it's good that the sun is shining. I think people should have listened to the weather forecast that the next few weeks will be hot, and we should be in the shade as much as possible. Don't turn on too many of those ACs. I mean, the good Lord knows we grew up obviously in good times when houses were built with jalousies, not jealousy, jalousies, in which you could have opened, and houses were built with those big V roofs, so that the breeze could pass through, the cool Atlantic breeze could pass through and cool down the house. And the jalousies, when you open them, you could have put a block of ice out on the jalousie so that when the breeze blow on the ice, it would have brought cooling breeze into the house to cool down the house. These days, we have lost that. We have destroyed that. We're building concrete monstrosities, and we are importing ACs. I pass some houses and ACs are like fairy lights all over the place. East, west, north, and south. Anyway, I guess those who claim that they graduate with the highest of degrees in urban planning, but who can't show yet if they did what they learned and put it in practice, I guess eventually them and others will wake up to the realities of Guyana and what Guyana has to offer, and in the spirit of Bornholm, use our natural endowment for the benefit of Guyanese and to uplift Guyanese. With that opening prayer, so to speak, there were some deaths. And of course, by now we know of Bornis Manson, AAMS, as in Medal of Service and Golden Arrow of Achievement, died at age 96 a couple of days ago. As you well know, those of our age and close She was a former radio broadcaster, well-known radio broadcaster, and the the head of the Radio Needy Children's Fund, the long-running Radio Needy Children's Fund. She was also known as Auntie Bornis, and she had also the Bornis Mansell Foundation. In that Radio Needy Children's Fund, I guess that soulful, sometimes say mournful music that was played before, during, and after the announcement of the Radio Needy Children's Fund. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. I'm sure many remember that music. Very haunting, and it used to tug at your heartstring. So even if you didn't want to, then you would have been able to extract the widow's mite and make a donation. Condolences also go to my very good friend and former neighbor, Alison Dotson, who Kadaki, I understand, has Buxton roots, or her family has Buxton roots. On the passing of her father, George Andrew Diabru, who died on the 29th of July at age 89. I don't know if you're still listening, Kidaki, but I don't know if you know Alison and the father and the family, the Diabru family from Buxton. Yes, Alison, as you well know, was a former GAC flight attendant. She was my neighbor, lived right opposite me here for a long time. Was married to the vet, Dr. Lyndon Dotson. And they had that place in Regent Street called AAA Drugs. Right? They used to run that place, even while she was a GAC flight attendant. When GAC folded, she left permanently for New York, and she's doing quite well in Brooklyn. Condolences to her and her family.
Well, Mr. Jordan, you asked me to intervene in your story. Yes, I know Alison. As a matter of fact, Buxton, with his fame for Kwekwe and so on, when she got married, I was among the group of youngsters who went to host her Kwekwe, right, somewhere in Georgetown there. And AAA Drugstore on Regent Street came into being, I think, after AAA Drugstore on Sideline and Buxton.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So they did have AAA Drugstore on Sideline and Buxton. Just the other day, I was asking a friend of mine, which was the biggest local pharmacy we had. And the person was telling me it had to be AAA Drugstore because the space there was dedicated to pharmaceuticals and the likes. So yes, our relatives live right up the road here from me, about 4 or 5 buildings, 4 or 5 lots in, right? And that would be her mother, grandmother, Auntie Tati, I think they call her. She celebrated a major milestone recently, right? So they had a big family gathering there. Yes, so the Dotsons are known. I don't know her father. I doubt whether her father is Buxton. Maybe, I'm not sure. But yes, I know the family.
Yes. So her father died 89, George Andrew Diabru. Yeah.
Condolences.
So I'm a couple. Condolences to him indeed. And also, I learned of the death 2 days ago, and I've seen Denny Champagne Collison reference it. I learned of the death of my good friend, A.B. Drakes, Arnold B. Drakes, brother of Francis Drakes, that you had on the program yesterday. But I only reference Francis Drakes to just put the affinity, but he's now, he changed his name a long time ago, and he's now known as Kimani Nehusi. Kimani Nehusi, previously known as Francis Drakes. Yes, his brother A.B. Drakes, Arnold B. Drakes, died I believe 2 or 3 days ago, and I learned of this death, unfortunately, on my birthday through a mutual friend. He had some issues, health issues for a while, and but even as I'm aware of that, I'm still shocked of his passing. So condolences to Kimani and all the Drakes, many of the Drakes who I know, who I've come to know over time, and relatives and other family and friends. From death to happier times, today is the birthday of a former schoolmate and long-standing friend, Lennox DeBarros, old Kitty man, is turning the biblical 70 today. Happy birthday, Bordy. We call him Bordy. And in him, whenever I look at Bordy, I always believe that it is not the student. It most likely might be the teacher, the school, the environment, and such. Because going to school, Bordy, and him not doing very well when we left school, he thought all hopes, that his life wasn't going to be much and so on. But then he migrated to the United States, and that again is one of the many, many success stories of Guyanese migrating, particularly to the United States, and seizing the opportunities given to them. Right? Many got opportunities and didn't seize it. Others did, worked hard, and today they are success stories. And he's one of those. I'm so very, very proud of Bordy. He holds down a major job at one of the largest hospitals in Brooklyn, Kings County. And that is one of two big jobs that he's doing. So, Bordy, enjoy your birthday today, man. Sorry I'm not there to fire one with you and wait for results, but I know you will enjoy your day. I want to, as I move on, I want to congratulate Annette Ferguson for perseverance and persistence in winning our lawsuit against the Guyana Times. And she has been awarded $15 million. Annette, I know you listen to this program. And so I hope if and when you collect, that this program will have a small contribution from the 15 million. But as I told Annette in another chat line that we chat, this is the force of the many hurdles that you got to cross to collect. Because those with fat pockets usually try to use the court system to wear you down. So they appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal. And when they finally lose all the appeals, you still have an issue about collecting. As you know, this is the second victory or the third one for Annette. Her major victory against Jack Dio is still in the court system, even though she has won, I think, on 2 occasions on the same matter. It's still in the court system there. A long way to go. But Annette is a Leo, and she knows the art of leading and persevering. Congrats, Annette. 15 million in the bag. We hope you collect. And as I said, I hope you remember CAMS TV with a small donation. You see how much work I'm doing, Kidaki? I sent one, and I'm trying to send another one here. Let me say thank you to all those who sent birthday wishes by whatever means, whether WhatsApp, Messenger, phone calls, or otherwise. It meant a lot to me. commercial music, Pitter Patter. Yes, one of my many favorites. I feel sometimes truly blessed, and I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful. Sharon, thanks for the greetings and the Facebook posts. I don't know why you aged me by 10 years because the post has me as 79 years. Wow. I don't mind looking like that when I'm 79, but that's 10 years to go. I'm 69. An age, according to the trade winds, no man, no West Indian man recognizes, accepts, nor even wants to know. I don't know why. I really don't know why. As a mathematician, I know that 69 is between 68 and 70. And 70 is the biblical 10. And 69 may have astrological meanings and so on. So I don't really know what the trade winds were singing about, that particularly West Indian man don't recognize the number. Perhaps if you listeners know, maybe you'd want to put it on the post. But if I find out, I will be able to put it too. Anyway, that's a little chuckle by the side. 69 is a good age. It's the age, as I said before, the biblical 10 that the Bible talks about. And but it's one that I will, in some respect, love to forget, because as I was wending my way to go and collect my pension, I got into a fender bender that resulted in an extended stay at the police station on my birthday, some 7 hours. So that's how I remember partly my 69th birthday. But like I said, I'm grateful to be alive. God is good today and forever. And we have to be thankful that his mercies are still being showered upon all of us who survive in this Chateau's land. If you missed it, then today also is the 41st anniversary of the death of the great leader, the father of this nation, undisputable father of this nation, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. And I believe even as we speak, there is a commemoration ceremony, annual commemoration ceremony that is taking place at the mausoleum in the Botanic Gardens. A few weeks ago, I read a letter that talked about the deplorable condition that the mausoleum was in, and that it had become the refuge of stray dogs. My goodness, my goodness. I don't know who's responsible for its upkeep, but that aside, I would want to believe that the mayor and city council that is in the hands of the APNU, PNC, whichever one you call, would have ensured that that situation did not arise. And if it did, for dereliction of duty, it would have quickly remedied. In no way that the mausoleum of the greatest leader this country has ever produced should be abused in such manner and left to neglect. Similarly, a couple of days ago, I was driving down North Road, and I had cause to send a text again to the mayor about the deplorable condition of the monument. I think it was called the Shirley Field Ridley Monument. But for identification purposes, it's the clay brick monument that is on the Merrimon's Mall, that is between, that would be New Garden Street and Ornock Street. Deplorable condition. Vines and grass and green moss and everything on the moment. We can't be serious of having a PNC APNU mayoralty and allowing these critical monuments dedicated to strong men and women and monuments that were put up on the PNC governments, for them to be decaying in this manner and left with and treated with callous disregard. I hope the PNC members of the mayorship are listening, and that both of these occurrences will be rectified with dispatch. I know the one for the mausoleum might have, because they have this ceremony today and they must have gone and spruced it up and cleaned it up and so on. But please, 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 Merrimon's Mall, I believe, is still under the control of the mayor and city council. And the least you can do is have that grass weeded periodically, have that monument cleaned up, spruced up, and let it move from an eyesore to something where people can go and relax, observe, take pictures, and all these kinds of things. The neglect, especially the benign neglect with which we treat our monuments, is unbecoming and ought to be rectified correctly. We don't have to get all monies in the world. All we have to have is a sense of decency, aesthetics, environmental friendliness, and so on. Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, there are no words to express our gratitude for what he had done all the years through. You know, I often say, I say again, in the heat of the Jagon communism, the Jagons communism of the 50s and the 60s and up to Jagon's death, Spear thought what this country could have been had Jagon ruled it. Spear thought what this country could have been, whether we would have been where we are today, or whether we would have been treated with the pariah status that a country like Cuba in the backyard of America is currently being treated, and has been treated for the last umpteen years. Burnham was not only a statesman, he's the greatest builder this country has ever produced. You see these comics who talking today, but they build bridge and they build this and they build that. Burnham built when we didn't have money, which shows a level of astuteness and prioritization that we can call legacy projects even today. Even today. I've seen tenders out for the dismantling of the Demerara Bridge that existed 41 years past its lifetime, built by the Burnham government. Kanji Bridge that replaced the Kanji Swing Bridge. The Quarantine Highway that they're now seeking to rebuild. The Linden Highway that they recently repaved. And you could name them on and on and on. All the multilateral schools, they go on all the housing schemes. Not house lots. Housing schemes. South Rhine Belt, North Rhine Belt, Tuckville. A lot of people don't know that Tuckville is TUCville. It was there for the trade unions. Tuckville, that telecom scheme close by, Tuckbore housing scheme, all those schemes, Melanie Damishano, Roxanne Bonham Gardens. We're talking about housing schemes, not house lots, bush, that some of us can't even identify, even though we paid money 2 years ago. That is the great Lyndon Forbes Sampson Bonham. Bonham brought Carrie Fester to this country in 1972. A lot of people don't know that that idea was birthed after Guyana attended Festac. I think it was in the second Festac in Nigeria. And that was somewhere around either between 66 and 68. 4 years afterwards, we were holding the fourth Caribbean Festival of Creative Arts, for which Bonham created Festival City, built houses from scratch to house the participants and the artists for that very Carrie Festival. And those who attended, whether as participants from overseas and local, or from the audience and so on, they tell you that it was the greatest Festival of Creative Arts in the Caribbean they've ever seen, and it remains the greatest. I heard we will be hosting it again for the third time next year. I hope with the kind of monies that we commanding today, that it will be a showpiece. It will be a showpiece. I hope so. So much Bonham did. Bonham brought back peace to this country at a time when they had internecine strife between 61 and 64. And you hear people writing books and talking about Wismore massacre. And by the way, the word is massacre, not massacre. But my friend told me about what happened at I think it's number 5 or so, West Bobis. And there had been a massacre in Myconi and all these things, where tremendous numbers of African Guyanese were murdered. I hear stories growing up of African Guyanese midwives being murdered by some of the people that they helped to bring into this world because of ignorance and race and politics. So on his birthday today, on his death anniversary today, his followers and those in his great party need to do serious introspection. Not the customary attendance at the mausoleum to observe that photo force. The party is in crisis, serious crisis. The great party of the PNC today is a shell of itself, 12 seats in parliament. The ignominy of the situation, beaten into third place by a 3-month newbie. If that doesn't call for introspection, serious introspection, I don't know what will. But it cannot be business as usual for that great party, because times have changed, attitudes have to change, leadership got to be energized, strategy has to be invoked, and vision for the party needs to be made known. It is unfortunate, it is really unfortunate that Barnum died in 1985. We all have to die. But at the tender age of 62, Barnum would have left a huge void in the society. What I really can't fathom up to today is that at the time when Barnum died, he had molded a party with strong up and coming leaders, strong ideologically grounded leaders. But after he died, to me, the party began to disintegrate after Haidt began to purge members of the party. Purge a large number of members, brought in a whole set of people who didn't have the ideological footing and grounding, and who, for the most part, left at the earliest signs of trouble, and so on. In many ways, Haidt himself may not have been that ideologically grounded for him to have started the kind of purge that he had embarked upon. Be that as it may, it's because of the absence of that ideological grounding in the newbies, the newer ones, that have caused the party the distress that it is in. Just witness those who have come and gone within a short period of time after they would have collected what they came for and used that as their jumping off point as they moved on to other places. I can't help but think, as I wind up on this part, because I wasn't thinking about using up my precious time on it, but I can't help but feel even more than pity for a great number of them. I heard one say he took shots. He took shots for the party. He was grounded in the party, and then he got nothing. But where he is today, they recognize his efforts. All kinds of story. One this morning I was listening to someone, he called himself Daggy or some he complaining about this and that and so on. The ideological grounding, not there. It is about I and me. It is about I and me. A good friend of mine of high diplomatic strength sent me a text and said, good showing in Linden, good showing in Linden. That his back channels is suggesting is a pity that it didn't have wider collaboration, because they thought it was a win demonstration only. And I said to him, well, first of all, that was wrong because it was a wider than win. But that the win party, which is the opposition, and the win leader himself, got to appreciate he in politics, if he in politics at all. And the I got to be traded for we. Because if you're I, you can't get the rest of the opposition with you. Maybe they say he knew and he's not accustomed to it and so on. But he better get accustomed fast. Because if you got a vigil in front of the whatever is his name, house, and being interviewed, you're talking, next election we'll get 20 seats, we'll beat them by 20 seats, and so on. But you got about 5 or 6 parties represented there. And then say, I will beat them by 20 seats. When we'll beat them by 20 seats? Those kind of talk. Don't endear yourself to the rest of the members of the opposition. And it clearly it's clearly inconsistent with unity But as a side also, I said, I think the party that describes itself as Greenheart got to show what Greenheart is all about. For Greenheart to be strong, it has to be doing something. And no other tree challenged Greenheart. None. Not even mahogany. So the PNC, all this sloganeering and all this kind of story got to stop. And they have to find that which made the party strong to keep the party strong and growing. But realistically, what is happening now, it's not boding well. It's not boding well. That's all I would say on that. May the comrade leader continue to rest in peace, I hope. But I'm sure if he's seen, or if he could have seen, he will not be pleased with what he has seen generally in Guyana, and particularly in his own party. This is not to deny the efforts of many party members' work that is being done by several of the party members, but I'm talking generally at the level of the party. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. You know, Emancipation Day has come and gone. A lot has been said. Maybe I will say a word or two eventually in the context of what I have to say next. But I want to say that when I was going up to Jamaica a couple of weeks ago, I was fortunate to watch a movie. I was fortunate to watch a movie, and it was called the Extraordinary Life and Times of Ulrich Cross. For those who don't know, Ulrich Cross was a Trinidadian. And he claimed to fame in the context of Guyana when he led the CARICOM 7-member team that reviewed Guyana's disputed 1997 general elections. As I recall, the team arrived after serious mayhem and so on. I think they arrived in March 1998. March 1998, as part of the agreement made under the Harmonston Accord. And part of the agreement had called for an independent regional team to audit the results of that election. In the event, they merely counted, like they did in 2020. They counted the votes in the box. They didn't examine the quality of the votes. And so I don't need just like how you didn't need a team in 2020, you didn't need that in 1998 to just count the votes. Because there wasn't a question that the count was wrong or so on. The question was always the quality of the votes in the box. And therefore, he came, he said the count was verified, give or take a couple votes here or there, but that the results were more or less in keeping with what it was. Indeed, that is what the 2020 team also said. They just counted the votes. That's it. Right? But this film, which is almost 2 hours long, they said it was a drama. It was come under the genre of a drama, but I think it was more a biopic, because that is what it said: the life and the extraordinary life and times of Ulrich Cross. Right? If you get a chance, I think you should show it because it dealt with his life coming out of Trinidad, going to study in England at that time, moving from, getting the experience of racism and whatnot, marrying a white woman, then being offered a post in Ghana, where he went and did extraordinary things, helping out with the new nation, and so forth. A really great movie, which I thought should have been shown as part of the emancipation efforts. And it's not too late. In fact, what we should make is August. We should make August Emancipation Month. That starts out with Emancipation Day on the 1st of August. But this business about celebrating the 1st of August, putting on a bunch of clothes that people don't even know the meaning of, right? Because those clothes that our ancestors wore had meaning. These days, you go to the Chinese store and you buy some piece of cloth, or you go to some other store and you buy something and sew something and you put it on. It looks like it's saying African print and so on. No, that is not how it works. Maybe it works for those ones who masquerade in African clothes and shaking hand and taking out pictures with Africans in national park and other places. Maybe it's good for them because afterward they could take it off and throw it somewhere. And then horrors of horrors, you see government people going around in African districts distributing cloth and African print cloth and so on. I think we're losing it. We are really losing it. But like I said, maybe I'll come back to that. Yes, but the film, as I said again, I will commend it. I will commend it to be shown in this period here. Yes, Ulrich Cross died at the age of 96 on October the 4th, 2013. On October the 4th, 2013. So, yes. I read a few weeks ago that Spain had named a number of countries that were visa-free, that in other words, then didn't have to get visas to enter. And they had named several CARICOM countries: Antigua, Barbados, Bahamas, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent. And so I was looking and said, wait, I'm sure they haven't finished. After all, we have the fastest growing country in the world. So I turned the page, and indeed that finished. So essentially what has happened is that they have omitted Guyana, the fastest growing country in the world, as well as Jamaica, Suriname, Haiti, and Belize. So these will continue to have to get visas to travel to Spain. And I said to myself, notwithstanding all this fastest growing, notwithstanding all that is being said, in many ways, we're still being treated like 30 years ago by these countries. Yes, we have a French embassy here now, but it doesn't mean that we can go to France without visa. We have to apply with all the onerous conditions for a French visa. And all that has happened now is that we don't have to go to Suriname or whatever to get that Schengen visa. But France doesn't issue Schengen visa. They issue French visa, I think, that you could use to go to the other Schengen countries. But if you want to go to, say, the Netherlands, you still have to go to Suriname to get to the Dutch embassy to get a Schengen visa to go to Holland. But you can go with a Schengen visa to France issued by the French embassy, but France has to be your first port of call. And then you can move on to the other areas, you know, and so forth. But unless it has changed now, you know, you go there and sometimes they give you a 1 month visa. All the money you got to pay for a 1 month visa and so on. So when it's visa free to go to the Schengen countries is really great, you know, rather than them issue you a 1 month visa and so on, you know. So when I said to myself, what it is that Guyana is not doing, that it's not getting the status of all these other countries, notwithstanding its massive growth over the last 5 years and so on. Notwithstanding its supposedly elevated status, with one of its citizens vying for UN General Assembly, UN Secretary General, and so on. What it is that we're not doing? And what I believe is happening is that our foreign policy has not really pivoted. We have benefited somewhat from our oil status, but our diplomacy, our foreign policy has not pivoted to enhance our image in that manner. And you heard me speak on this program several times before, that there seems to be some kind of aversion with this government and the African continent. This government goes every other place except having relations with Africa. There are 54 countries last time I think we checked in the African continent. And how many of them do we have diplomatic relations with? As far as I'm concerned, we only have an embassy in South Africa. And that's it. An embassy that really and truly is of no consequence to us, does nothing much to us. When I checked on African countries that do not require a visa to visit Guyana, I came up with only 5. 5. Botswana, they can come without a visa and stay 90 days. Then there is Eswatini, formerly Swaziland. They can come without the visa, stay for 60 days. Ghana can come and stay for 90 days. Lesotho can come and stay for 14 days. And South Africa can come without a visa and stay for 30 days. Compare this with Barbados, whose passport, I believe, is recognized by, I believe, 154 countries or 160 something countries, way more than Guyana's 100. And when we say recognized, they can go to these countries with a Barbados passport and they don't have to get a visa, compared to Guyana, that is, I think, either 70 something or so on. Compare Barbados' relationship with Africa. Where among the citizens that African citizens that don't have to get a visa to go to Barbados are Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Seychelles, Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, Liberia, the Gambia, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. And it says generally, citizens of all 54 countries of Africa do not require a visa to visit Barbados for tourism for up to 90 days. For up to 90 days. Jamaica, one that has been excluded from the Spain story. Jamaica allows citizens of Africa, 16 African countries, to come to Jamaica without a visa. Botswana, Eswatini, the Gambia, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. 16 African countries. So the relationship of many of the CARICOM countries with Africa is great, it's wide, it's deep. But in Guyana, that relationship is shallow. It's shallow. Guyana is a country that was built on the backs of enslaved people coming out of Mother Africa. Coming out of Mother Africa. And yet today, Guyana got the least contact with Africa in terms of its citizens who can come here. And when they're torn into anything, whether it's for employment, to replace nurses who are leaving or teachers who are leaving, they go to Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, even Pakistanis I see here also. Several of them are clerics, Muslim clerics and whatnot. But consider when Barnum was running this country. We had visits from many African states. Many African states. Plus, people like the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, from South Africa, Namibia, Angola. You had visits from those freedom fighters. Then you had visits from people like Kowunda, Nairi, Sir Seresti Kamo out of Botswana, and so on. I think General Gowan, I believe, also visited Guyana. I don't remember whether it's on his visit to Guyana that he was overthrown or otherwise. But it's just to show you our deep relationship with Africa. And so as not to discriminate, we also had visits from Indian countries. I recall distinctly Sri Marvo Bandaranaike from then I think it was Ceylon, then changed his name to Sri Lanka, who visited Guyana. Bandaranaike. I don't remember if Indira Gandhi visited. I think I have to look it up. I'm trying to remember whether she actually came and was in the Promenade Gardens laying a wreath at Gandhi's feet. I'm just trying to remember. But the point I'm making here, we had such a worldwide view. We had such standing among the African countries, such standing that we could have got Bonham's stature and standing among the African countries, could have got Sir Sridhar Ramphal elected not one time, not two times, but 3 consecutive times as Commonwealth Secretary General. And Bonham's statue could have got the African countries to agree to elect Carrington, Edwin Carrington, as Secretary General of the ACP. Today, our star has fallen among the African countries. There are 54 countries. But yet, we are trying to get one of our citizens elected as UN Secretary General, and we have a very poor relationship with the continent of Africa. I don't even know even if we have an ambassador, if one has been named in South Africa. The last, there was a Charge. The last was Hunt, Kenrick Hunt. When the government changed and he came out, I don't know. I don't know who the ambassador, if they have one at all. They may very well have a Charge there. But what is the relationship? What is he doing? What business does he brought and so on? Dangote is one of the richest men in the entire world. Dangote has just built a massive refinery, oil refinery in Nigeria. Yet we are not quoting these countries and a man like this to come to Guyana and see what investments. I heard he had interest in Guyana, but it was frustrated. I don't know how true that is. I don't know how true that is. But you know, we jump up and we congregate in the national park on the 1st of August and we put on them 4 African print and all kind of story, and we allow ourselves to take out pictures with those who harass us through the year, who don't have much thinking about us and so on. And we're not looking before our eyes what is happening to us. We're not looking and seeing what is happening to us. We're not seeing that we are being overrun by unchecked migration to this country. Unchecked migration. Look at the videos, interviews by Reuters and all of them of Cubans who talk about trying to get money to jump on a plane to come to Guyana. They're running out of Cuba. They're not accepted anymore in the United States, so they're coming south. They're coming south and depressing and our already difficult situation as it relates to health, education, jobs, employment, and so on. Unchecked migration and housing and all these kinds. Unchecked migration from Venezuela, it continues. Unchecked crossing of the borders by Brazilians. Massive influx of Chinese. But on none of these waves of migration and so on, do you hear citizens coming from Africa? You hear our population has crossed the 1 million threshold. A population that has hovered around 700,000 for decades. And it's suddenly over the last couple of years crossed, if the numbers are to believe, crossed the 1 million threshold. And those numbers then will be the large numbers of unchecked migration that has taken place. In that 1 million and something, the Stats Bureau was careful not to give us the composition of the 1 million. How many African Guyanese, how many Indian Guyanese, how many Portuguese, Amerindian, and so on. They didn't give us that, but they say we crossed 1 million. But it is clear to us that the unchecked migration would have contributed to that rapid increase in the population. Now, bear with me. If African Guyanese are being pushed out, as in our teachers are leaving still in numbers because of poor conditions, as in our nurses and doctors leaving for anywhere but Guyana because of poor conditions, and others, as you talk to them, who are completely fed up with Guyana or they can't get an opportunity and so on, so they are also leaving. So if African Guyanese are leaving for whatever reason, that's the push factor. But there's no pull factor. There are no African Guyanese coming here, African or people from the diaspora coming here. As far as I'm aware, they're not welcome, certainly not in the numbers that Cubans are being welcomed, Venezuelans are being welcomed, and so on. When Haitians who were visa-free in the context of CARICOM were coming here, there was a big hue and cry. So much so that when the PPP was in opposition, they questioned the then Minister of Citizenship about the Haitians coming. You see? They didn't question about whether the Indians were coming from India or Bangladesh. They questioned the Haitians who are part of CARICOM. And they treated those Haitians so terribly, locked them up and all kinds of things. It took the guts and the gumption of Darren Wade to go to the court to get those people freed from where they had them somewhere in Mahaico. Now, Haitians don't come here because now they got to get a visa. They're CARICOM, but they have to get a visa to come here. So you're pushing African Guyanese out, and you're not allowing Africans to come in, and said certainly in the numbers that you're allowing the others to come in. Then, as a percent of the growing population, the African Guyanese or the Africans will be declining. And if this continues, within 2 to 3 decades, Africans will be a tiny segment of a rapidly increasing population. We're not thinking this. We jump around in National Park and all these places in the boiling sun, taking out photographs, while our ancestors who toiled for this land, who were never given anything while toiling, even and when they were so-called freed. Look where we are today. A little history and a little numbers are good starters. When the slaves were freed in 1838, the composition of Guyana's population was just over 100,000 persons. It is estimated it comprised mainly of freed slaves numbering between 80,000 and 100,000. Indians on May the 5th, 1838 had just arrived in Guyana, 396 of them on the Hesperus and the Whitby. And then there was a sprinkling of others, mainly the European colonials and the Amerindians. But 90% or more of the population comprise African descendants. British Guyana, African descendants. 1838. Today, Africans, prior to us going to 1 million, were set to comprise 29% of the population. And I'm guaranteeing with that 1 million plus, that percentage would have gone down. So we are being pushed to the margin. This just in terms of numbers, and not even going. I don't think I have time even to go in terms of the economics and the finances and so on. I'm just showing in terms of numbers. This is a pattern in countries where slavery of Africans was the economic system, and where after freed slaves, indentured follows and overrun the Africans. I give you another example. Mauritius. Mauritius has more or less the same history like Guyana. A country where I was fortunate to go to in 1988, April. At the time of the freed slave in 1838, the Mauritius population comprised largely of the freed slave, estimated to be about 87,000 of them, with a sprinkling of other races, just like what happened here. In 2024, as a result of the unchecked emigration of Indians through the indentured system, by 2024, Indians comprise nearly 70% of the Mauritius population. Africans were relegated to a tiny percentage in single digits. And I went there. I spent a week attending an ACP EU conference and so on. And I had a little chance to look around the island, and they took us around and so on. And I kid you not, I could not find a single person of African descent who was of significance in that society. And you can go when you finish this program or do the checks right now and check the cabinet of Mauritius and see if you can find one African in it. So today, people think that Mauritius was always an Indian country. We are heading down that road, not having the presence to understand our status in this society. Whether it's by design or involuntarily, the fact of the matter is that the African Guyanese in Guyana is fast becoming numbers that could be irrelevant, because of the implied or expressed policy. One that is pushing African Guyanese out of Guyana, and one that is preventing Africans in numbers coming to Guyana. And you know what might be a side effect of all this? I just realized. Argentina had an express policy of whitening their population so that people, only today it's now coming out, that Argentina systematically decimated its African population. choosing a policy that will whiten the population and get rid of Africans. They wanted to be the Europe in South America. I'm not saying that happening, there's no express policy as far as I'm aware, where that is concerned in Guyana. But it's not express, but it might be a consequence of this unchecked migration of Cubans, Venezuelans, Brazilians, and so on. Because check and see where what color they are. There aren't massive numbers of black Cubans coming here, massive numbers of black Venezuelans coming here, massive numbers of black Brazilians coming here, and so on. These are the light-skinned ones who are coming to Guyana. But like I said, I know of no express policy to whiten Guyana, the same way that happened in Argentina. But I'm saying, if by 2040 our population has shot up to 1.3 million or thereabout, it would have largely been due again to this unchecked migration of light-skinned Cubans, light-skinned Brazilians, light-skinned Venezuelans, and so on. And look at the impact on the population of Guyana, especially the African descendant population in Guyana. So why spend our time jumping up on that one day? A day which for many now has not much of a meaning, and therefore they don't bother to celebrate it. We have to sit down and think clearly about where this is going. Examine it, get the evidence, get the facts, and present it, because these numbers are a threat to us as Africans in Guyana. We were already a minority, but we were a significant minority. Due no fault to us. Remember, we were a large, significant majority at the time of 1838. Today, we are losing even our significant minority status as part of the population. And we're not thinking anything about it. We're not thinking anything about it. And this is a great concern. Great, great concern. Because it has implications for the distribution of wealth, distribution of income, and such not. The government recognizing the power of the indigenous vote in the context of the African Indian binary in Guyana has spared no effort, has left few stones unturned in presenting gifts to that community. As I said last week, in the height of the trauma of these people, with the Burima tragedy at the Tushaus conference, $3 million fund was announced. $3 billion fund was housing fund was announced for Amerindian communities. And that is only one of several initiatives targeted specifically to the Amerindian community. So in addition from benefiting from the general budgetary support like all other citizens are expected to benefit, large sums are targeted specifically to that community because their numbers represent the difference between either party winning or losing the government. In a situation where the government no longer depends on African support to win elections, that influence, therefore, that lack of influence gets reflected in the lack of many things: economics, finance, opportunities, wealth, employment, everything. And you're seeing it. You're seeing it today. You're seeing it today. As I said last week, this is the second decade for people of African descent. UN decade. Second decade, I believe, and this is the second year. But what? The government has come out with no program specific to the African community that shows it understands that decade and the implications of it. None. And we don't have people who are pressing that button. And that is why my good friend, Eric Phillips, the pounding that you got resonated with many. Resonated with many because Eric Phillips is the chairman of the Guyana chapter of the Reparations Committee. And I think he's a vice chairman of the CARICOM chapter of the Reparations Committee. And people feel, especially in this decade, that beyond talking about reparations, nothing much has been done to promote the decade. Nothing much has been done to pressure the government to come out with a program, a program designed for the upliftment of Africans. You have these side shows that going on right now, right? They're called Model. Now you wake up with another side show. It's called Model Village, and you have the fan out exercises to dampen the bereavement tragedy. And you have these visits, whether it's to Morocco or so on, and the great promises, all involving significant sums of money specific to those communities. You don't have these side shows going into. Yes, you got one that went to Linden and so on. Linden has heard that many times before. Many times before. Many times before. But compared to our size, our communities are not getting a fraction of the monies that are available and that are being spent in other places. Imagine you start out a model village in Lenora, where everything over the last 5 or 6 years seemed to have been, cited, and it's not perchance. That's where the president has his home when he's not in State House. So everything is going around Lenora. And when it's not Lenora, it's done by Tushin or done by Poriga or any other place except African communities. Just this morning I was reading, a new elderly person's home is to be built. Guess where they're building it? And more. The same place where they cited one of the 6 or 7 hospitals, special hospitals that they built regional hospitals and more. And we sit and we say nothing. Nothing. We say nothing. Nothing. What? Because we're afraid that we're going to be called racist and so on. While you're being afraid, this is what is happening to us. I saw a picture where Jagdeo was visiting Ipadaji's, either it's Ipadaji or Bornham Foundation, I don't know, there, but Alexander was there. Alexander didn't look too animated. In fact, I don't know what he was explaining or trying to explain to Jagdeo. But those people make certain they had pictures and videos to put out there, the narrative. I'm sure, I know Vincent long since the 70s, early 70s. And I'm sure what he was doing it in the best interest of the Ipadaji and thing. But look at the imagery. Look at the imagery. That man ain't got no love. Jagdeo ain't got no love for Ipadaji and Bornham Foundation and so on. But they all made certain that they fanned out the national park, put on their so-called African print, and make certain that the PR went into overdrive on that day. Because those pictures will be used especially during upcoming elections. And they can be used to send overseas. When you complain, they say, but what you complaining about? Look, this look like we having what you talk about. Look. I'm not saying you don't have to talk to these people because they're controlling the levers of money and the levers of power. But what it is that you're talking to them about, do you inform us? If there was a discussion between Alexander and Jagdeo at that place, what was the discussion about? Was it to get back your funding? When will you get paid? Was it about new funding for Ipadaji or similar groups in the context of the second decade? What it is that you were talking about? Or you're just telling him, oh, this thing that was written by Rodney or that thing that was written by so and so on. What it is. Because this PR exercise got to mean something for us too. I didn't celebrate 4th August. I really don't anymore. Because for me, I don't know what it means for me living in Guyana. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means for my brothers and my sisters and everybody else that look like me in this country. Everywhere I go, I get the same story. I get the same feeling of despair among people of African descent. The same feeling. I get whispers. I get people furtively looking around to see if anybody can be hearing them and they're talking to you. I know people who will not even talk to me because they don't, not that they hate me or anything. They don't want to be seen. Let somebody go back and say, hey, they were talking with Jordan. Because talking with Jordan or similar people like me could be poison. You might be telling me secrets. I don't know what the hell I need your secrets for. I don't need the government secrets. I don't care about the government. I don't need the secrets. But that is how people feel. People don't want to call you. I don't care. I really not care. I understand their plight. But if we are going to sit and remain in this plight that we are in, that is what the people want. That is what they want. That is what they want. So I don't bother anymore. I don't bother anymore. And I deliberately didn't talk about emancipation and Emancipation Day last week when I was on the program. I deliberately allowed the time to run out. I don't know what it means anymore in Guyana. I don't really know what it means for people of African descent. I saw Rick Ford Borg put out a list there, a tentative list of contracts awarded. I think it's either for 6 months of this year or something. Could be. I have to go back and look at it carefully. What I don't know, he showed where $120 billion in contracts were awarded to predominantly Indian or Indian-owned or Indian-dominated businesses in Guyana. $120 billion. $120 billion. Small change, but show me $120 billion over the last 6 years of this government in contract that they're being awarded to African businesses. $120 billion. That's where the narrative and the story has to be told. And our people who we elected, and our other leaders, they're refusing to talk this story. They're refusing to talk this story. They're refusing to talk the talk, which is the despondency that is taking over our community, our African communities, the despondency, the despair, the hopelessness that is taking place among our communities. How long you going to be giving our communities some cleaning drains contract, some picking up garbage contracts? How long you going to be giving them? How long the money that comes from that will last? How long? But yet, you, in return, the government hopes to get everlasting love being poured out to them. So they can turn up and oppose the vigil, so that they can turn up in Linden. My goodness, that is how we gone. I see Valerie, former minister, housing. Valerie, I saw in a video. Poor girl, I sympathize with whatever health challenges you may have. Valerie come out praising the PPP, a former coalition minister, junior minister, first in housing, I think it was. Then I think she went to agriculture or something. Praising the PPP for roads and scholarships and some sort of thing. That she own government that she supposedly served had done and done more with the little that we had. That is what gets me angry. And don't worry, this nonsense people trying to cover it up. Well, you know, everybody free to think what they like and all kind of thing. That is just a cop-out. 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 So you serve in the highest, in the coalition government, as a minister, and you telling me, because you are now saying that you are a failure, because you were in charge of two great ministries, or the junior minister in two great ministries, housing and agriculture. And you out there now praising the PPP. What? Because what? They're giving you a couple contracts or some sort of thing. That is what we are selling our soul for. Selfish. But what about the rest of the community? Kokwani, I see a video with Sherrod showing what quality the roads they're being washed away, break up like biscuit, they're falling off, and so on. And you praising the PPP for roads. Oh, I see roads in Linden. I see a new bridge. Do you know that new bridge was initiated by your own coalition government? Do you know that? Do you know that we had already obtained money for that bridge? Do you know that? Or were you one of the many who are in the government as sleepers? That's what gets you angry. You put out, some of us put out our soul and our heart and our everything to make that coalition work, while others got away with a free pass, and now they're in a position to go out there and talk whatever they're talking there, to sing for their new masters. African Guyanese, not too many people are speaking on your behalf, but as an African force and an African Guyanese, I believe I have to speak. I believe because no one else will speak for us. And contrary to what the others in other parties believe, no one else but yourself will be able to free your mind and make you progress. No one else. Why you think the PPP led by all whoever they are being led by always put pressure on governments led by African Guyanese? Not one of those governments, Bornum, Heights, or Granger's government, was given breathing room to accomplish. Not one. But we got people who say, oh man, it's a different time. It's a different time. It's a different time to be parents and be grandparents and all this kind of story. One senior come to jump out and say, well, politics changing. The politics changing, look what happening and so on. But when you do the dissection, it happening, all you're doing is cutting up the minority. A large chunk of the black votes go to win. Some of it go to PPP. Some of it go to FGM. A little more went to ALP. And little that left back, stay with the PNC, APNU. But that now, people, is the politics changing. It only changes when the black vote is being cut up. That's the only time it changes, when the black vote is being cut up. Don't change another time. And it's okay to go into the Indian community and say, hey, don't split the vote. Y'all know what's going to happen. They can send them soldiers. They can send them soldiers for your women. Don't split the vote. And for the most part, the Indian community says, all right, El Jefe, we ain't gonna split the vote. Notwithstanding all the things they do to me over the last 5 years, we ain't gonna split the vote. But you got ones who gonna tell the black community it is okay to split the vote. It is okay to split the vote. It is okay to ride your way back into slavery. Oh yeah, slavery ain't got only to do with chains and tongue and corkscrew and whatever else they used to do, all the indignities they used to do us. Slavery of the mind, starvation of the body, and capture of your heart and soul. Slavery. It's okay to split the vote. And when the vote split, because people think that all we are people with mulish qualities and who can be bought easily or led easily. That is what we have to change as leaders in our community. That is what we have to change. We have to have some level of self-pride. The ones that our parents imbued in us. Pride, dignity, education, empowerment. Those traits, those character traits that seem to be lost on us. Lost on us. I looked at, in the morning when I woke up, I looked at that video of the vigil and saw those who were against the protests, couple black women, and their behavior made me cringe, made me question my Africanness. That this is what we have descended to. This is what our people, and in particular our women, have descended to. For what? A couple dollars? Which you could get far more if you would put your heads to the wheel and ask for the representation, be part of that representation. If you will take advantage of whatever opportunities are available to uplift yourself, become your own boss. No, you are feeding into their narrative that you can be bought cheaply, and then they work you like a donkey, treat you like a donkey, and thereafterwards your behavior as an African woman will make our ancestors cry. When I look at that behavior, I said to myself, where do they see anybody else but an African woman who behaves like that? Who would behave like that? Do they see Indian women behaving like that? Do they say do they see Amerindian women behaving like that? Chinese women, Portuguese women, white women? No. African Guyanese women, outrageous, lewd behavior in public. And we want people to respect us. We want other races to respect us. Why you think they don't respect us? Because respect has to be forced within ourselves. I rest my case. I am so frustrated, terribly frustrated with the status of African, particularly African Guyanese. It's not that I don't speak for anybody else, but nobody don't speak for us. Nobody don't speak for us. I'm terribly frustrated with our leaders. I'm terribly frustrated with the government and its lack of support for the African community, especially in the context of the second decade. And I abhor the hopelessness that seems to be pervading the society, especially among the Africans. Yes, there's hope, because I see a little protestation here and there. But I wouldn't want to pronounce on it definitively, but I just want to say I've seen this before. And the issue here is whether it will be taken to the next level, whether it will be sustained, whether it has a purpose and everything else. The Linden great numbers that we saw, accidents and the shouts were for Ejil to go and for the regional chairman that supposedly supposed to go to win to be put in place. So that was a tiny set of the issues of the day. And while I have my differences with Jermaine Figueroa and all the others who left and gone over to the PPP, he has a letter in today's papers that I think makes some sense and has to make sense. So this action has to be on two fronts. while you were out there in your great numbers protesting Jagdeo's visit to Linden, the point and the reality is he's in Linden. He's in Linden. So what you had to do is organize some of your support to make certain that they got into Watuko, so that the you wanted to present could have been presented by them. And then we could have made it public and let them know. But you can't have it either this or that. The government got the resources that is not their resources. It is our resources. It is our resources. And we got to recognize that all the time. They were elected, and so we have to keep them on their toes and make certain that we get a part of the proceeds and the patronage and everything else. So while you have your great numbers outside, a portion of that number should have been in Watuko, representing your case and the cause, the wider cause, not only making regional chairman, the wider cause about resources, jobs, empowerment, entrepreneurship, all these things. You take away the people toll from the bridge. Now the city council suffering. The town council suffering. People can't get paid. Those are matters of immediacy in the context of Linden. And then there are the wider issues. And everywhere you go, you should be asking people what happened to a program for specifically for African in the context of the decade. I have no doubt that Azuddin Mohammed can't represent me as an African. He can't represent my issues. He can't represent my issues. But he's there as the opposition leader, and we must put pressure upon him to represent our issues. After all, there's a large number of people that look like me who voted for him. And he too must come under pressure. I'll probably say more of this next week. I just want to move on to my second point I want to raise today. So, we had an IMF mission led by Miss Luzinian. We had a mission that visited from July the 20th to the 34th of this year. And they held discussions with the government ministers, the governor of the central bank, and other officials, and senior representatives of the private sector, labor unions, and as they say, other stakeholders. And they were so comfortable that they also held meetings virtually, which is meetings from Washington, D.C. to Guyana. Now, this was an Article 4, what is called an Article 4 consultation mission. Okay? And what is Article 4 consider? I explained this, I think, sometime, I don't know, 2 years ago or so on. These are regular, usually annual economic mission that come to the country to check on the temperature and the health, economic health of the country. Right? The IMF sends a team, they visit the member country, and they review the economic policies and so on, economic and financial policies, and they will give advice on how to improve stability, improve financial stability, growth, trade, and so on. Right? So the missions coming together these days aren't to worry about as opposed to the ones that came in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, when we were under what is called a fund program, when you have to be aware of the draconian imposition of policies and so on, devaluation and cutting employment and so on. No, they're doing the standard Article 4 mission that is in the articles of the IMF. And every country who is a member of the IMF subscribes to those articles and therefore can expect a visit, even United States of America. So here are a couple of comments I want to make initially on this here. Of course, to the best of my knowledge, this visit was never announced to the Guyanese public. Now, they came from July 23, 30th, and I admit I was out of the country from the 18th to the 24th. But while I was there in Jamaica, I was reading the news all the time. And such an important visit, if it were announced, would have been covered by Kaito News, which I read every day. And from time to time, I would read Kiskidi Watch. But I didn't see anything. And I get DPI. I'm still subscribed to DPI. And so I will get it every day whenever they bring it out and so. And I never saw any announcement of this mission. This is contrary to what we were expected in the past. That whenever this mission is visiting, it's announced when they arrive or even before they arrive and how long they will stay and so on. So I don't know if it was announced and I didn't see it, but to the best of my knowledge, I only knew that such a mission was in the country after they left. And a friend of mine sent me their concluding statement. And I went to confirm on the website of the IMF that indeed this was the concluding statement that they left. So this continues a pattern that seems to be developing where important announcements are kept from the public. You recall, I think last week, I talked about the president frequently leaving this country without informing the Guyanese public. Without it being indicated that the prime minister is now the acting president. Without it being indicated who is the prime minister, the acting prime minister. Anybody can recall who was acting prime minister the last time Phillips acted as president? Because I believe he was acting as president during the Barama story. We would have never known that he was acting president. It was never announced that he was acting president until the Barama story came up. And then we knew that Ali was somewhere in Canada on official visit, even though it was alleged that he was there to attend the FIFA finals. When did we degenerate like to this in such a manner that the president is leaving the country and he's not telling us A, that he's leaving, B, for how long, and C, for what purpose? But he's using state funding. And we don't know. We don't know. And we seem not to care. These are not niceties or protocols. They're important. They are important. And I think we should insist that the protocol be observed and that evidence is shown to us, the public, every time the president is leaving, there's a swearing in. There's a swearing in of the prime minister as acting president. We have to get this. I mean, it took the disturbance of the 1997 election to write into the law that all swearing in of presidents consequent upon the election must be public and witnessed. Do we have to have a similar situation? Do we have to have a similar situation? It is the first time, I think, in all presidencies, I believe, where president is slipping out the country, slipping back in, we don't know, and so on. I think we must put an end to this. At the highest level of the government, these protocols must be observed. There's also, in this lack of announcement, hiding information, if you want to call it, or delaying the announcement of information, if you want to call it that, where the government now under pressure, tremendous pressure from Kaito News and other commentators, myself included, about the taking on of new debt. They're no longer telling you when they contract new debt. They're waiting on an appropriate time to then bring it to the parliament and lay it there. Story done. But you don't, in times past recently, up to recently, where they would have shown, or by way of a short statement out of Ministry of Finance or DPI, say, well, listen, we signed this loan and so on. It's only when Ashley Singh, on July the 27th, I think it was, in Parliament, that we were made aware that within the first 6 months of this year alone, the country had contracted substantially new external debt. It was never announced to us, as far as I'm aware. Again, like I said, maybe it was announced somewhere and I didn't see it, or I missed it. He presented to the parliament several contracts that were signed. He presented a 61.43 million euros contract that was signed with Banco Santander SA. Banco Santander SA. And backed by UK Export Finance to build Terminal 2 at the Cherry Dragon International Airport. We didn't know that such a loan was contracted. We heard that they were having discussions with the British about building Terminal 2. We heard that there was some turning of the sun sometime recently. But we never knew that they had contracted new commercial debt. Commercial debt. Because this is what it is. It has been contracted from a called Banco Santander SA to build Terminal 2 at the Cherry Dragon International Airport. This contract has been sole source to BHM Construction International UK Limited. This $14.9 billion contract, almost $15 billion contract, has been sole source to BHM Construction International UK Limited. No tender. No tender. It was gifted. The construction of this Terminal 2 was gifted to this BHM Construction International UK Limited. Then he let us know that 190.95 million renminbi, equivalent to $5.92 billion, Guyana dollars, was contracted from China CAMC Engineering Company Limited for the construction of new Bartica Hospital. For the new Bartica Hospital. This is the same hospital that should have been financed from the Indian line of credit that was approved under the coalition government. After we came in, you all remember the fiasco with the specialty hospital? $18 million was contracted under, I think it was the Ramatar government, to build some specialty hospital somewhere there in Turkine. And somebody who won the contract, who they said never even built a health center. The fiasco was further compounded when a $4 million advance out of the 18 was given to that company, and nothing much was built. Eventually, the company was sued. The government of Guyana won $900 million, but was never able to collect a penny. And even as I speak, the government is paying back that $4 million for not a single thing that was done. When we came in, we canceled the 14 million, and they gave us a new loan of $18 million to build or refurbish 3 regional hospitals: West Demerara, the one at Sodi, and the one in Bartica. And like you heard me say last week, none of the lines of credit that were signed by the coalition government with the Indian government, and there were 4 of them, none but one, a small one for pumps, was disbursed by the time we left in 2020. Yes, a small amount was also disbursed from the 50 million that was supposed to build the Ogle bypass road. 2 million, I think it was, that was used to conduct a study that should have been done long before we went to get the money. But the Ramatar government collected the 50 million. There was no study done. The study had to be done under the coalition government. It cost nearly $2 million out of the 50. People must know these things. They must know these things. So frustrated I was that when we went to Bartica with a cabinet outreach in March 2019, I was moved to tell the people in my maiden speech, political speech, that once that money, oil money, start flowing, we will no longer have to depend on the mercies of international financial institutions and agents to finance our development. Bartica Hospital was always in a critical state, yet we could not get the Indians to disburse monies to that project. But so that is by way of telling you that. All right. So, and then he also told us that 50 million US dollars was contracted from the Caribbean Development Bank for some Guyana environmental sector reform program. 50 million US dollars for a Guyana environmental sector reform program. This is not a project. This is what you call a PBL, a policy-based loan. In other words, then, you do a couple of things that they ask you to do, not project, couple of things. They may ask you to update your environmental laws, or or some such thing. And once you do that, 50 million is disbursed to you. So this is like balance. This is like budgetary support. 50 million will be disbursed to you right away. Imagine we going taking $50 million from the Caribbean Development Bank for budget support. We ain't satisfied with how much we taking from the Natural Resource Fund. We're not satisfied. We're going to see the for take 50 million US dollars for what is largely budgetary support, propping up the budget for which the deficit continues to grow. Then he also informed us that we took a 5.242 billion Japanese yen loan from JICA, that is the Japanese International Cooperation Agency for Water Supply Improvement Project. I didn't do this my homework to tell you how many loans, water loans, have been signed between August when they came back into now. Every time you wake up is another loan in the water sector. If anybody can truthfully put on this chat whether they are getting a consistent trickle of clean water, I will be very happy to learn at least 1 or 2 or 10 or how much persons are benefiting from this. A trickle, not a stream, just a trickle. If you're getting a stream, power to you. But you know what? These people gone now into commerce, into business. They're bottling water. Something that private sector people should be doing. GWI can't get its act together, can't give people water even in their pipes on the lower ground, can't give people consistent water, and definitely can't give people consistent quality water, but they got the gumption to say they're going to open a business bottling water, bringing more plastic into this country, and creating havoc with the environment, for which we went and get a $50 million loan from CDB for the Guyana Environmental Reform Project. So that is another $6.98 billion that is being added to the debt. Then he let us know that there were a number of amendments to existing financial agreements. The first one was with the Bank of China Limited facility that financed the new Demerara River Bridge project. I don't know why we're signing still with that, because that project, as far as we're concerned, was commissioned on October of 2025, just before the elections, right? But here we're learning that there's this facility that was signed on February 13, 2026. And he told us that the original facility was restructured, but he didn't tell us what impact monetarily that will have. He didn't give us any figures and so on. And then, of course, he told us that the U.S. Exim Bank credit agreement for the gas to energy project that was signed on February 3rd, 2026. And he says Exim Bank has agreed to waive commitment fees for a short period. Again, we weren't told how much was saved as a result of this waiver, and we weren't told whether that saving was final saving or whether it was deferred. In other words, then, whatever was saved in that period was now going to be diffused over the life of the loan in terms of repayments. So we want. Another comment I would like to make quickly is that I checked with a leading member of the opposition, and he didn't confirm to me. He claimed that he was going to check. He didn't get back to me at the time of this program, but I rather suspect that the opposition was not invited by the IMF team to meet. This was a standard practice in the past through the years. Whenever an IMF Article 4 mission is visiting, they ask specifically to meet with the opposition. Unfortunately, this practice was either halted or not entertained back in May 2022, when the IMF fund team visited and left without meeting the opposition. I quickly seized upon it, got contact with the then opposition leader, Aubrey Norton, and explained to him what needs to be done. And he was going to that meeting that Bork was keeping around that time, and he was able to meet with the IMF and put the opposition's position. I hope that the person who I spoke to will take this matter up with the appropriate authorities so that the opposition's views, unfortunately, which perhaps could be taken into account in the final statement going to the board, they will get their views in. Because when the IMF left, it left a concluding statement, which is normally be done when a fund mission comes to an end of its mission. And such a statement describes the preliminary findings of the team. Interestingly, the IMF will normally draft a statement and then they will bring it to the government. And then the government will go through with its officers and its political heads, will go through line by line, scratch out words that we don't want, scratch out ideas that we don't want, and there will be a haggling, and so on. Ultimately, an agreement in principle is reached in the concluding statement. But it reflects language, statements, policies, suggestions, recommendations that largely reflect the views of the government. So when we go there crowing that is the IMF who said this and that, the IMF is comfortable in saying it. In the past, in all of my dealings with the IMF, and I can safely say no one in the country, including, well, no, let me call it name, has met more times with the fund and done these statements and so on. So I have a fair idea what's going on, right? But the fund has always been strong that while it will accommodate as far as possible the views of the government, ultimately is their statement of their findings and so forth. But many of them have to look at their jobs and so, because if the government doesn't like the statement, they could complain to the executive director, and then they could complain to the man director, all these kind of different things. So there's this sundance in trying to make certain that, you know, you dance it in the raindrops and so on. But of late, I have to admit that the IMF has now become like another of the government's external cheerleaders. This last statement paper over cracks, obfuscates the truth with diplomatic language, and it tells a story that is far removed from the lived reality of the average Guyanese. And you know, this development has been increasingly evident in the post-August August 2020 period when we exited the government. You know, as a prominent economist, Terence Yip, reminded us, the concluding statement of the IMF must be read as much as a political document as an economic report, with the result that its most critical conclusions are entirely lost in translation. That is what he said, right? A few quick comments before I close on this statement. One, the first one is that no one will doubt that the compelling statistics that Guyana's economy has grown fantastically since 2019. Even the COVID-wracked years of 2020, 2021, and 2022, when most of the world's economies were experiencing negative, zero, or even low growth, Guyana's economy was growing from the 5.4% recorded in 2019 to an incredible 43.5% in 2020, followed by 19.9% in 2021, and a stratospheric 63.3% in 2022. No one notes also that this trajectory has continued in 2023, when growth was measured at 33.8%, 2024, a fantastic 43.8%, and 2025, when another 19.3% was recorded. However, the fantastic growth is almost exclusively the result of offshore oil and gas activities, where financial gains and corporate accounts are more evident than everyday paychecks. As one commentator, as I've read and seen, has observed, 30% of the wealth of this country is concentrated in the top 10% of the population and their income. The influx of foreign capital and high income expatriates demand the influx of foreign capital and high income expatriates demand have driven up real estate prices, rent, and basic commodity costs. And this is a real problem for persons on fixed income, persons on low wages, such as the public servants, security guards, pensioners, the disabled, the dispossessed, and so on. Indeed, the top 50% of the population holds about 75% of total household income, while the bottom 50%, comprising the working people of this country, captures only about 25% of the total combined income of the entire bottom 50%. No wonder, as a consequence, that poverty hovers between 48%, whether you believe the World Bank figures, and 58%, whether you believe the Inter-American Development Bank figures. With minimum wage in the public sector just about 110,000 Guyana dollars. That's roughly about 550 US dollars. But this compares favorably to the private sector's minimum wage, which is 60,000 Guyana dollars, about 300 US dollars. A recent IDB, Inter-American Development Bank study, has shown that in South America, the indigenous population and people of African descent comprise the bulk of those who are in poverty and extreme poverty. In the case of Guyana, 30% of Guyana's population is considered to be in extreme poverty. And so, just based on IDB alone, the bulk of that 30% will be people of indigenous and African descent, right? And those 30% of the people are existing on income of less than 760 Guyana dollars per day. In all of this, children are disproportionately affected. For example, kids aged between 0 to 15 constitute over 35% of members in extremely poor households. Let me go over again. Children aged between 0 and 15 constitutes over 35% of the members in extremely poor households. And even the government's own figures, as shown in Budget 2026, bear out a stark reality of this poverty. For example, infant mortality rate has gone up from 9.3% in 2025. On the 5, mortality rate has gone up from 11.4% in 2021 to 14% in 2025. Low birth rate babies, there has been no improvement from 8.1% in 2021 to about 8% still in 2025. Severely malnourished children under 5. It was 0.4 in 2021 and it's gone up to 0.5 in 2025. Moderately malnourished children under 5 has gone up from 1 in 2021 to 1.5 in 2025. And overweight children has moved from 1% in 2021 to 1.5% in 2025. The IMF, take a quick 5 more minutes. The IMF reported satisfaction with Guyana's handling of its debt, reporting that, that the external debt was a manageable 12% of GDP. But this hides the fact that the GDP includes the oil and gas sector. When you abstract the non-oil GDP, Guyana's external debt balloons to 35% of GDP. Considering that the government says its strategy is to diversify the economy away from its reliance on hydrocarbons, the debt should always be measured against onshore activities that would effectively be servicing this debt long after the oil wells would have dried up. And I point to you an interesting editorial in yesterday's Kaito News, also on the debt. Do you know at the end of last year, the total debt was projected at 7.7 billion US dollars. And it is expected to increase by the end of this year to 10.3 billion US dollars. An increase of 2.6 billion US dollars, which was more or less the same as the amount that the government will be taking from the Natural Resource Fund in this year. So the government is raiding the Natural Resource Fund even as it is borrowing more and more. How do you reconcile those two? Guyana is a society of conundrums. Finally, on the unemployment run, the IMF says that the official rate of unemployment is 6.8%. And this has gone down from 12.8% in 2020. Male unemployment is down to 5.1%. Female unemployment is down to 9.3%. Youth unemployment is down to 12.1%. But the international estimate that is being used is 11.9%. So there's a big difference between what the official statistics are saying and what the international community is using. The labor force participation rate is roughly 55%, meaning that 55 out of every 100 eligible people of working age are in the labor force, meaning that 45 out of every 100 is out of the labor force. And these will comprise full-time students, people with disabilities that prevent them from working, discouraged persons who have stopped actively searching for work, and stay home parents and caregivers, retired individuals, and so on. So those will comprise the 45% of the workforce. So you're hearing in this country how there's jobs for everybody, but people don't want to work. Next time, I will perhaps continue with the IMF report, because there's a lot in there. I don't really want to get into all those arcane numbers and so forth, but this is enough to tell you that those external guardrails on which we depended, they are like every other guardrail at the domestic level. Their foundations now are being shaken, and for good reason. Yes, expatriates and foreign governments will always look after themselves, but many of them had distinguished themselves for the diplomacy that's grounded in human rights and all these kinds of stories. Now, life be different. The Americans control the oil, they control the commerce in the country, the British control the airport, the forestry, and whatnot. The Canadians got 13 of their companies that control 16 million ounces of gold. Plus, they control the only uranium country in this country. Chinese, well, you know. So we are at a crossroads here as Guyanese. Anyway, I've taken up more than my time. I've come to another end, and until next week, God spare. Goodbye. We got blackout, by the way. We had blackout, so I hope you were hearing me for towards the end. Bye.